Yo, what's going on? Conklay Soundwaves here. I just got home not too long ago from seeing Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed this. It was a little goosebump-ish. That's about the best way I can kind of put it, like those Goosebumps cartoons. It kind of started to have that vibe more closer toward the end of the movie, but a lot of the scenes and they pulled out of the stories from this book were genuinely really creepy. The visuals, I mean, I always, love that book, but, honestly, I'll tell you, I'm not a huge person who loves to read books, but the visuals that help you kind of, picture what those stories, like the monster or whatever it was showing, always just did a great job, and why I love that book. And this movie does a fantastic job of that, showing the visuals of this movie. So I gotta say that overall, I thought it was fantastic. There are a lot of corny stuff and stuff that they did. It's set in the 1960s, and it's kind of got a goofy kind of build up to it, but it's got kind of like a Stranger Things vibe to it. I think that's kind of what they were going to. I don't really care for Stranger Things, but the way they did it with with the kids, in the olden days, in the 60s, and I think that's kind of what they were going for. I actually really enjoyed it. I think that was a really good premise in the way they did it, to knock out cell phones and any other kind of hypothetical things that could have happened. But overall, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was genuinely creepy, and it being a PG-13 movie, I'm not gonna lie, I did not watch any reviews. I didn't want to be spoiled by anything. I wanted to go into it with a completely clear conscience as I do any other movie. But after watching it, I'm kind of shocked that it's PG-13. I mean, it's probably that'd probably be about the best tone for it, to be honest with you. But it's genuinely really creepy. Now, I know they're I feel that, I grew up watching very scary, terrifying stuff. My parents made me. I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street, Chucky, all this stuff when I was very small. Probably a lot smaller than I should have been watching this stuff, and I think psychologically, probably wasn't the best thing for me to be watching. And I think this movie is a really good kind of stepping stone for children who, are interested in scary things. It's not too terrifying, it's not gory, but it's freaky, it's creepy, and it's got a kind of a lighthearted tell, of it to a degree. And I really enjoyed that. Now, like I said, I grew up watching crazy, scary stuff, so when I saw PG-13, I was like, it's just gonna be held back a little bit. And, to me, I love deep down crazy, scary horror stuff, blood, blah, 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 because I'm accustomed to that. And now, you have to understand that the target audience for this film is not going to be, someone like me. It kind of is. It definitely is. Most of the audience that were in the movie theater definitely were somewhere in my age range. I did go with my oldest son. He's 17, so this is definitely appropriate for him. But I definitely wouldn't take any of my younger kids for it. It is PG-13, and I would highly say that anybody who's 13 and above, this is not it's not a bad movie for someone 13 and above to see. Below 13, you might need to rethink what you're doing. Now, like I said, my parents let me watch all kinds of crazy, scary stuff. I don't do that with my kids because I just, after growing up and realizing, those were things that I probably shouldn't be watching in my time when I was little. Now, the story is I thought was not bad. I thought that, the way that it built up to everything, up until about, I'd say 75% of the movie was really good. I think the ending part of it did start to get more goosebump feel to it, or maybe that just started to set in for me that it was kind of going with a Goosebumps kind of vibe to it, because I felt everything else was, kind of a more grown-up approach to it to a degree. Now, the cast of characters, I do think the kids were all really great actors. There was no part where I'm like, I thought that everyone did a really great job in acting out who they were supposed to be. You had your stereotypical, funny guy who's got to make jokes and shit about blah, 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 blah. Very Cassius as the kids, you got the funny, goofy guy, the kid who has this problem or whatever. But I think all the cast of kids were fantastic. I really have no gripes with the acting whatsoever. The build up to every scary part where they actually started to show the stories of how it's transpiring and having those stories come to life was fantastic. It was genuinely fucking creepy. And even when these stories came out, like the Big Toe, that's one of my favorite stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I've told all my kids growing up that story multiple times. I always change it up a little bit here and there, but that's one of my favorite stories. And as soon as that story came on, I looked at my oldest son, I patted him, I was like, look. He's like, oh yeah, here we go. Because he knows the book as well. But the stories, genuinely great build up to when something actually happens and transpires on screen. The visuals were just fucking all jaw-dropping creepy, just like how those illustrations were in the book. Very fantastic job. Very fantastic job. It started to set in, like I said, about 75%. It was real goosebumpy-ish, and it kind of I feel the ending was kind of a cop-out to a degree, where they just kind of talked to the person who made these books to make it stop, and they're like, okay. I'm like, you could have done a little bit better there. But overall, I gotta say that I'm genuinely impressed from this movie, and I highly recommend it. If you're interested in this movie at all, it's a great one to watch in the theater. It's definitely worth that price. I had a great time. Me and my oldest son went and watched it, and we both genuinely walked out like, man, that was really good. Now, I know there's a cast of people who really like the Goosebumps stuff like this. This is a little bit more elevated. I would say this is like a Goosebumps movie done right. I also grew up with Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps and stuff like that. I do feel like those underplay it more towards kids. They have a creepy element, but it's so goofballed and whatnot that it isn't scary, it isn't terrifying. But this definitely has a very, holy shit. I mean, even me, like, who watches crazy shit, and one of my favorite horror movies of all time is like Event Horizon and shit like that. Even I'm watching this like, oh shit, like, it's fucking genuinely got some creepy shit going on in it. So I mean, honestly, the only thing I can really leave you with is this is definitely a must see. In most of in my age range, and even my kids, they've seen Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's a fucking fantastic book. It's classic as all hell. It's a great adaptation of the book, and there was a little bit of argument that I've seen, the kind of story was a little goofy, but the one thing that really kind of just transpired in me is I found this book when I was in elementary. I remember being in elementary school in my library and finding this book and pulling it out by myself and thumbing through it and finding these visuals, those crazy, creepy drawings. I thought I found something that wasn't supposed to be there. I felt like I had stumbled upon something that wasn't meant for children. And in the story, this girl finds the book of the girl who has these creepy stories and whatnot, kind of to a degree. There's a lot more. I don't want to spoil too much, but I kind of felt that was kind of like, a little nod to some of us who may have found that book that way. And I know that was a children's book. It was in library. It was in my library as an elementary student when I was a kid. So that kind of played a little bit to me. But overall, I mean, it's got a little bit of kooky, stupid stuff in there. What movie doesn't? There's a couple of eye roll moments where I was like, but for like 98, 97% of it, it's pretty fucking solid, pretty fucking creepy. Got a little hokey at the end, but overall, I really can't hate what's there. I actually really enjoyed this film. So that's all I really got on it. I really just want to speak about it because I really enjoyed it and I wanted to share it. And if you haven't seen it, I definitely would. So anyway, Kamikaze Soundwaves here. Much obliged for watching, and I'll catch you over the next one.